Hello everyone and welcome to Module 8, LGBTQ+ Inclusion and Supportive Policies. Today we will be looking at gender identity and gender expression. The aim of this presentation is to give an overview of the different gender identities and expressions and explain the difference between the key terms and concepts. At the end of this presentation, you will be able to define LGBTQ+ key terms and concepts and outline the importance of using inclusive language. Starting off, we will introduce the concept of gender, discussing what it means and how it shapes individual identity and social interactions. Next, we will look at gender identity, focusing on how individuals internally understand and experience their own gender, which may or may not align with societal expectations. We will then cover gender expression, explaining how individuals outwardly express their gender through appearance, behavior, and other means. Following this, we'll define key gender identity terms and gender expression terms, highlighting key terminology. Now, let's explore some key definitions related to gender. Gender, as defined by Dr. Tony Malone, is the socially constructed ideas about behavior, actions, and roles a particular sex performs, acts, and displays. Gender enters into all our social relations. When people interact, their view of themselves, including their identity and their rights and possibilities, comes up against the way they are perceived by other people, and the way that others behave towards them. This quote from the Council of Europe highlights how gender affects every aspect of our lives. It explains that gender isn't just about being male or female, but also involves how we express our identity through behavior, appearance, and roles in society. Sex is defined as the classification of a person as male, female, or intersex based on their reproductive organs and functions, biological and physiological characteristics that define humans as female or male. Often, society conflates sex and gender, viewing them as the same thing. However, sex and gender are not the same thing. Gender binary is defined as the viewpoint that gender consists of only two gender identities. Now, let's explore some key definitions related to gender identity. Gender identity refers to each person's deeply felt internal and individual experience of gender, which may or may not correspond with the sex assigned at birth, including the personal sense of the body, which may involve, if freely chosen, modification of bodily appearance or function by medical, surgical, or other means, and other expressions of gender, including dress, speech, and mannerisms. Some people's gender identity falls outside the gender binary and related norms. Agender is defined as those whose gender identity does not align with any gender. Bigender is a term associated with those who embody two gender identities, which they can feel one at a time or simultaneously. Cisgender or cis is a term denoting a person whose gender identity aligns with their assigned sex. Gender fluid is a term depicting a person who does not identify with a single gender. It is not fixed and can change over time or from day to day. Gender non-conforming is a term for individuals whose gender identity does not fit into the societal expectations related to their assigned sex at birth. Genderqueer refers to individuals who define their identity as neither entirely male nor entirely female. Grey gender refers to a person with strong ambivalence about their gender identity and expression. Intersex is a term used for people born with reproductive or sexual anatomy and/or chromosome pattern that does not seem to fit the typical definition of male or female. Non-binary gender is the preferred term of a gender-neutral person of any gender that falls outside of the binary system of man and woman. Polygender describes a person with several gender identities. Third gender describes a category of people who do not identify as male or female, but rather as neither, both, or a combination of male and female genders. Transgender is defined as an umbrella term for transsexuals, cross-dressers, genderqueers, and people who identify as neither female nor male and/or as neither a man nor as a woman. Transgender is not a sexual orientation. Transgender people may have any sexual orientation. Transgender people are those whose psychological self differs from the physical sex with which they were born. The term trans is often used as shorthand for transgender. Transgender man is the term for a transgender individual who identifies as a man or whose gender identity is of a man and was assigned female at birth. Transgender woman is the term for a transgender individual who identifies as a woman or whose gender identity is of a woman and was assigned male at birth. Now, let's explore some key definitions related to gender expression. Gender expression refers to people's manifestation of their gender identity to others, for instance, dress, speech and mannerisms. People's gender expression may or may not match their gender identity or identities, or the gender they were assigned at birth. Androgynous is defined as a person who does not identify or present as solely feminine or masculine. Butch refers to a person with an overtly or stereotypically masculine identity or masculine acting woman. This is a term not recommended for use outside of the lesbian community, and can be seen as offensive in or out of context. Feminine is defined as separate from gender and sex and focusing directly on the defining characteristics of femininity which are not universally identical, although some patterns exist, for example gentleness, empathy, sensitivity, caring, sweetness, compassion, tolerance, nurturance and deference are traits that have traditionally been cited as feminine. Feminine behavior, style and approach can be displayed by people of any gender. Femme is a term used in the LGBTQ+ community to describe someone who expresses themselves in a typically feminine way. It can often be found used as a derogatory word, although for some it can be an empowering word. Gender expansive is a term describing someone whose gender expression does not conform to social expectations or stereotypes. It is also known as gender non-conforming, gender variant, or gender creative. Masculine. This term is separate from gender and sex, and focuses directly on the defining characteristics of the fluid social construct of masculinity which are not universally identical, although some patterns exist. For example, energy, forcefulness, determination and strength are traits that have traditionally been cited as masculine. Masculine behavior, style and approach can be displayed by people of all genders. Transfeminine. A person who identifies as trans but identifies their gender expression as feminine. Transmasculine. A person who identifies as trans but identifies their gender expression as masculine. Thank you for joining us today. In this presentation, we explored the foundational concepts of gender identity and gender expression, providing an understanding of how individuals experience and express their gender. We discussed a variety of key terms related to gender identity, as well as terms related to gender expression. Understanding these concepts and using the correct terminology is central to creating an inclusive workforce where everyone feels valued and respected. Here you can see a list of the references used throughout the presentation. These sources will assist you in researching more deeply into LGBTQ+ key terms and concepts and the importance of inclusive language. Thank you for listening. I hope this presentation has provided you with a deeper understanding of gender identity and gender expression and how these concepts shape individual experiences and interactions in our society.